Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Inchtones podcast. Today I have Erica Witte here with me today. She is a local mom, acquaintance of and friend of mine that also has a child with special needs. And when I first heard of her name, it was through the local mom board on Facebook. And when I dug a little deeper, I was realizing that she was on a mission for what is now called Project Playground to revamp and renovate the local playgrounds to be more inclusive in our town. And as a woman and mother, obviously with children on the spectrum, with profound special needs, when I look and see women on parallel missions, knowing that it is driven so much by their lived experience and their heart, I cannot help but want to pull them in and ask them how I can get their message out, because it's a foundational part of my work here on the podcast. So Erica, thank you for being here today. And I'm so excited for everyone to hear your story and your journey and what Project Playground has done locally and also for you as a woman.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So what was your inspiration for Project Playground?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm a mom of two. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. And my 7-year-old was born very prematurely and has a physical disability. So he uses a walker for mobility. And really where this started was, we were finishing up early intervention, and I did a tour of the public preschool in my town where my son was scheduled to attend. And part of the tour, you go see the playground because, think about it, social, emotional learning, like so much for early childhood development. That takes place on the playground with peers and movement and motor skills, etc.
Play is the foundational part of any development for children. It's foundational.
Yeah, exactly. So we're standing on this playground and, I'm looking around and everything is, climbing equipment, wood chips, just there wasn't really anything accessible on the playground. And at the time, I think I even, started crying. Like I was just like, how is this going to work? Like this can't be, recess should not be like where your child feels excluded,
Or struggles the most.
Yeah, exactly. And so at the time, I initially talked to the school district a bit, and it wasn't progressing as quickly. And I ended up talking to some parents actually with the PTO. And at the time I was the full-time working parent in the city. I mean, I didn't even know the heads of the PTO, but I just reached out to them and I explained I explained the situation, and I'll never forget it. One of my co-founders, Laura, she had this long pause and she said, well, we need to change this. This is not okay. And she introduced me to our other co-founder, Rima, who was also a physical therapist. And she's like, this is not okay. Like, we need to change this. Playgrounds should be places where, everyone feels included. So with that, we founded in 2022 Project Playground, which is a local nonprofit initiative. And since we founded it, it has raised over $500,000, and we have added accessible equipment, accessible surfacing, and inclusive signage. So far, we've added it to 3 school playgrounds, and we have another 4 playgrounds that are currently in the works. And one thing I found is that, a number of towns do great jobs where you go to the local town playground and it's amazing and it's fully inclusive. But some of these schools are so old and, kids are spending, 2.5 hours a week on the playground. And if there's not, opportunities for them, really, that's not the way it should be.
One of the things I have to go back to in your original inspiration tour of the school, and then what inspires you to begin this, is what you said about the mulch and the climbing. And I think that the word that always rises for me is that there wasn't conscious planning. And I think as someone, I'm sure you and I have sat in more hours than we care to admit in IEP review meetings, and there's the verbiage that you use from an IEP standard is the least restrictive environment for the children to learn. And the playground is absolutely an extension of the school in the IEP. And I think that you found that edge where you hit that friction line of it's, yes, this is a playground. This is not consciously doing what the IEP and the legal process of public education for children like ours not only demand, but are entitled to. And that word conscious planning just like comes up so much because I can feel I align so deeply with that like heartfelt sinking feeling of like, this is not going to work. Right? Like mothers know you can feel that and you analyze that so quickly. And then second, I wanted to hit on the power of the mom network, right? Like you immediately knew where that gap was and reached out to the other women and mothers and therapists that could help this mission grow. So those are just two things I wanted to touch upon because I believe that they allowed that momentum that you felt and wanted to change grow.
Yeah, I think as far as conscious planning, I don't think that there was ever an intention of
There
anyone to
rarely
be like,
is. There
oh,
rarely is.
let's make this, let's make this so certain kids can't use it.
I couldn't agree more.
And
And that's what leads to these frictions because if you don't ask for the entirety of the children you're serving, you will erase a population without even thinking about it. And it's not ill will. It doesn't come from a bad place. It doesn't come from literally not lack of wanting to include. It just doesn't come to mind because you don't have the planners around that mindset, right?
yeah, and that's something that I feel like has been really powerful and impactful about this initiative is like, yeah, I am thrilled that now there are playgrounds that have, accessible seesaws and
Right?
spinners and swings. Like that's amazing. But what I also am like so proud of is that this has like really raised awareness that
Mhm.
now when different groups are looking at updating their playgrounds or just changing things, like one of the first things they mention is, okay, well, is this successful? We should add something that's successful.
Yes.
It's really like brought it to the front
Yeah.
of the conversation. And I would just say the other thing that I'm really proud of with this is that, my daughter's 10. So at the time we were starting it, she was in, second grade. And I thought it was really cool that she was able to see, and the other committee members, their kids were able to see that, like, here was something that, like, it wasn't right.
Yep.
The way it was set up was not right.
That's right.
And that, here she was able to see her parent speak up, do it in a way that was positive and change it,
Yes.
and be able to change it and be able to like, not accept it, but also change it in a way that had a positive impact. And I just felt like for my kids to see that, I thought it was like or other kids see that, I thought it was like a really like great lesson.
Well, I go very deep in my own life about modeling, right? We can tell our kids, you and I have typical children, and I can tell my 12-year-old till I'm blue in the face, like, remember to always look out for the children that might not have the friend on the playground. Remember to always keep in mind that the communication of different students is different. You live in a home where that is true. The only way children really do absorb that through life is by the modeling of their parents. It's they watch us. Our children, our daughters, that your daughter that you're speaking of, my oldest, they've imprinted on us and us on them. And they are watching us like hawks, even if they are not even consciously aware of it. And I think that you struck something so deeply there is that she was watching her mom. I'm going to get chills. She was watching her mom make a change for her brother in a way that in second grade, you're not going to hear her tell the soliloquy, but maybe when she's like 30 and 35
Yeah.
and making those own choices, she will think, oh my gosh, my mom modeled that for me. And I think that is one of the greatest gifts we can give any child, but, specifically the siblings of special needs that have special needs siblings.
Yeah. And then going back to your other point regarding, the
Yes.
mom network, I think that, and I know it's something that you talk about a lot on your podcast and your guests talk about, having a special needs child can be very isolating and, all sorts of emotions that come with that. And something that I can't even like put into words, but it was like so refreshing and like just like unexpected is when I went to, some of these other parents or this network. I mean, it was people who like I didn't even know,
Yeah.
and it was people with like, their kids are running around, they're using all this stuff on the playground. And like just like we had a couple people join our committee, and like this person, maybe their relative was used a wheelchair, or this person, they were an occupational therapist, so they like had a connection to it. And then we had like two or three people where they're like, I just live near this playground and I want it to be like great. And it was just like so refreshing to just meet people who it was like unexpected. Like some of the donors that came in, they were just good people. And I felt like it really, this journey can be so isolating. And it was like very inspiring. And it made me like rethink a lot of things about just,
Well,
the
I think
journey.
support, like it's like almost this cleansing of we don't know what everyone in our community or how the support could be offered if until we present it and people come out and say, I would love to help with that. I can do that. I feel aligned to this because of my own lived experience. And I think that that's what, again, this is such a success story in that, because you and I both are mothers who obviously have not been stopped by any sort of diagnosis of our children to just live full and happy, charge forward lives. And maybe you and I both, and I can align with this, you still were bracing for there to be a little pushback or not the support that you would have anticipated, or were you asking too much? And then when you saw the benefit and you saw those people come out and support, it does cleanse you of all these like residual notions that you thought like, oh, this wouldn't work. This is not going to happen, or it's not going to happen in the capacity I want. It really puts your faith back in your community.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, before that, I just remember walking out on that playground, and I felt like, before we made this change, like, I just felt like very angry. Like, and I'm like, why do I feel angry? I'm on a
Yeah, I
playground,
know.
like I shouldn't feel like this. And then after we got, worked with the community and everything, it just was a totally different feeling. It was just a
Yes.
really positive feeling. So like turning this very like negative feeling, isolated, negative, set. And it was a really good experience. I mean, it actually like led me to kind of like rethink my career, change a lot of things with how I'm kind of approaching this. So yeah, it was a big deal.
I love it. And I think, again, this being an example in our town, but also to give hope to anyone else that might be listening in a different part of the country, to just understand that I think the more aware you are that the community of support is out there, and you have the ability or desire to change something like Erica took from a situation that was seen as painful, or it made other moms like her angry, like same with myself, utilizing those emotions for a project to allow the community to support you is never the wrong choice.
Yeah.
I felt the same way when I brought a documentary to our town a few years ago called Rocco Up, about a non-speaking autistic boy learning how to surf out in Montauk. And the response in the community, again, it blew me away. I was so taken aback by how many people wanted to see this 22-minute short. And it it went to show exactly that kind of community level desire when you actually give community members the opportunity to support. So I want to totally switch gears here, because something that has risen to the top of our one-on-one conversations is something very specific to your project Playground, which was that you installed communication boards for children, nonverbal, non-speaking autistic children. It was this specific way in which you created those that I'd love for you to talk about, because I love this journey and the stories that you've shared about this.
Yeah, no, thanks. So it was brought to our attention while we were doing this project. There was a woman in the administration who had a relative who was nonverbal, and she highlighted, the benefit of having communication boards on the playground, and we were all in support of that. So the first thing we did was look at, okay, like how much do these cost? Because like this is a
Yeah.
grassroots effort. Like
Yeah,
we were like dollar for dollar
absolutely.
figuring this all out. So we look at it and it's like I don't know, depending on which one you get, it's like $4,000 or something. It's like for a standard board that doesn't even include like installation. I'm like, it's kind of expensive. Is there another way we could do this? And so we decided to create a program called Project Playground Young Designers,
Mm-hmm.
where we basically created a volunteer application, which I submitted to the high school guidance counselor
Mm-hmm.
portal
Mm-hmm.
and posted it to really search for volunteers who were interested in, not only the community, but maybe like design, graphics,
Yes.
speech, etc. So we had a number of students apply and we brought them into the school to meet with the speech therapist who explained like, okay, this is what an AAC device is. This is how it's used. She brought in a talker and the kids
Right.
passed it around. And we created kind of like two projects. One was to create a custom communication board graphically, and another student created it physically. And it was wonderful because it was customized, not only with the school name, but we were able to kind of say, okay, there's a spinner on this playground. Let's make
Mm-hmm.
sure that there is a spinner on the communication board. So we had kind of like one leg of the project was communication boards, and then the other leg was inclusive signage. So we had a student who was a really good artist, and we said, okay, we want to be able to show like a welcome sign that really highlights children of all abilities. And we gave him a couple parameters, but very limited. And he came back with this like amazing design, which shows, features a child with a communication device, a child with a hearing aid, a child with a wheelchair, a child with AFOs, like
Mm-hmm.
orthotics on their feet. And they're like all together. And it's like, welcome to the school. So with that, I felt like it was great because kids walk by that every day, and it kind of made it like I know what that is. I know what an AFO is now, because otherwise
Mm-hmm.
they see these kids and they're like, "What's that? Why are you wearing that?" And it like normalized. It like normalized that some kids might use devices and it's not so different.
I think, again, this goes back to the modeling we were talking about. What we intake, what sometimes we don't even realize the messages or the pictures or the branding that we're taking in so frequently in this like global digital world, that the conscious choice to do that is basically allowing children to get those messages that this is what inclusion, this is what the abilities of all children look like, so that they can match that with their actual peers. And I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we need the power of inclusion to come from all these different angles. It's not just the child that's in a class with our children. It's the actual signage. It's what the principal is modeling. It's what the other mothers are modeling. It's what the choice of foundation, not being mulch, being a more solid rubber or a flat top. I mean, there's so many conscious choices that we sometimes don't. I think that you and I do, but we have to do better about that messaging across the board. And I think that that's just an awesome example of that. Like, you put that on there because we have to, as humans, we take in visual messages all the time. It can't just be vocal, because the children that are being included sometimes don't have a physical voice to speak. So I love that. I love that was part of the journey with that board specifically.
Yeah, and I think the communication board, I mean, here it is, like we had a quote for something, it was like $4,000 to get
Yeah.
this standard board.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we empowered these high school students to do it.
Mhm.
One of the students designed this board graphically, which has now she's customized for about 4 schools in our town, soon to become 7. So her design is now featured at all of these schools. And I mean, she ended up, she's in college now, but she ended up like applying for a scholarship and highlighting
Yes.
this project, and she got like a scholarship for it. It was just like all over it was this experience where like now we have something that instead of costing $4,000, it costs like $100
Yeah.
by the time we did it. Um, and it was like it got these high school students who, I mean, you know, they probably, you know, they might not have had a connection to a person who used a communication device, but now they've created something that really and I think about that I think about the communication board a lot because, you know, there are several students in the school who use talkers, but I feel like it's even more impactful because I mean, every student in the school now, they know what a communication board is and they know why it's used. It's like built all of this awareness that otherwise wasn't there before.
I think inclusion, the word inclusion, I believe in through what you just shared. It allows for this expansion of opportunity and not just in the physical realm of what material you had to get, right? The communication board on the playground, but it expanded the opportunities of what a high school student never in a million years probably thought that her skill set
Hmm.
and how that would expand into her life, create more opportunity for her. And like, that's what I believe so deeply that inclusive directives can be because it expands the heart and minds of what individuals touched by opportunities like this. It expands them too. It allows them to see deeper into what they can provide into a community. It's so cool. Again, it's not even, these are the things I always say, they are life luxuries. We always put such a price tag on the things of this world, right? Like even you just saying that was $4,000 to buy the communication board. That's insane. You know, my grandfather would say that's highway robbery.
Hmm.
The fact that it's a luxury to work with younger individuals, younger humans who can utilize their skills, provide a service, and then use that to expand the best parts of them. That is luxury in life. I can shout it from the rooftops. I had my high school babysitter. I recorded an episode with her and actually haven't announced this. It's been one of the most downloaded episodes of the podcast. She is all of 19 years old. And her generation, I think, in a positive light, because there's so much hate on Gen Z and what they do and all these things, their empathy and what it has expanded for them, I think, is unparalleled. And I love this anecdote from your own work.
Yeah.
What would be an Inchstone win of yours currently as these projects continue to blossom? What is something that is a small victory that you saw or experienced the process that actually had a ripple effect like that? Would you think of another one for us to share?
I mean, I guess I'm just thinking about standing on that playground with my son and then like, you know, months later after we made these changes, I mean, we put in a spinner that he brings his walker, right? He walks it right onto the spinner. It's like a zero entry spinner and he's on there with like the other kids and it was like it was unbelievable when I
Yeah.
saw it. But I guess actually one other thing I would say that I felt like really helped, you know, push certain things forward. And I feel like I used this a lot with this project, but then I also use this a lot with just like general, like everything. Like when we were on that playground at the first time, like one of the things I noticed is that they have like sometimes they have these like barriers that are around the playground. They're like wooden barriers. And the goal is so that they keep the wood chips in. But I mean, for one of the entrances to the playground, it was right there. Like you couldn't even get on like from the pathway because there was a bear. Like I was just like, this is ridiculous. So what I decided to do at the time is I made a video. I made a video of, my son trying to access the playground where there is this wood barrier and he couldn't get his walker over it. And I remember I struggled a little bit because I'm like, you know, here I'm like highlighting something that my son can't do. And is that, you know, you know, how do I feel about that? But I felt like it was going to, you know, make a positive change. And, you know, I just played around with iMovie. I had never used iMovie before. I made this video and I sent it to the principal and like a week later, the thing was gone. I mean, I think the power of like videos and I use the video a lot with just like everything because, you know, whether it's a new therapy team with my child or educators or whatever. I feel like sometimes you're in these situations where like, okay, you're at a doctor's appointment and you have 15 minutes and you're trying to like capture, the everything, all the strengths or all the challenges that your child has. And a lot of times like that's not possible, or it's just like that's not the day for that.
Hmm.
And so I've something that I've done a lot is every year I like create like a 2 or 3 minute video of like
Yes.
compilations of everything, and I include, some text and some music or whatever. And I share it with the teachers, the aides and everything ahead of time. And I feel like they're able to really get a sense of, the strengths or the challenges or whatever it is. And I'm able to tell that story in a
Mhm.
way that, I don't have to feel like I'm describing it via email, or, maybe I was hoping he would show something in an appointment that he didn't, So I found that to be very powerful with not only Project Playground, but with just things in general.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's efficient too, right? I mean, utilizing the tech that we have to get our message across effectively is highly important. I talk a lot about mother's intuition, and I think what how you're sharing that, we've all been in those offices where they don't exhibit the behavior, or they do something that is not really the focal point of what you wanted to get across. And to be able to share the fullness of our experience as the mother and what we do experience with their behaviors or the limitations or the wins as well, and what we want to keep on and encourage, that can be an exhaustive experience if it's only through one sort of like, again, verbal medium. And I love that. I think that is a wonderful, not only just that's a gift to anyone listening here. I know my kids' schools actually do, every therapist for their, twice a year IEPs, every therapist actually does that. They take all the year's videos and they're like, this is what we've been working on for 6
Wow.
months. And so the whole IEP meeting, I mean, it's an hour or 2 hours long, but it's dotted with, they wear GoPros and they show me what's
No.
been going on from
Wow.
OT. And it's been the coolest thing because then it allows for that generalization to happen at home. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that he could do that. And then vice versa of, oh, he throws his juice box in the trash at home every time. And here's this is the verbiage that we use. And I think that's awesome because I think it just really shows that utilizing all the different ways that we can show the fullness and the breadth and the depth of our children who do need more support is never wrong. It's never the wrong thing to be able to show that depth and breadth, and from the mother's perspective and what's happening in our world at home and outside in our community. So what a wonderful example. Erica,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this conversation. I think that it's going to light the flame under a lot of women, mothers, and caregivers in different parts of the country, to use you as a wonderful example to what can happen. And I think turning something that can be really painful into such an incredibly expansive, beautiful experience, not only to change the lives of your children and those that go to school with him, but for the whole community. You never know the fractals of which that'll happen. And this is a wonderful example of that. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And until next time on the Inchtones podcast.